Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Patrons video today that I'm making for Arsi as part of their very first custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track by an act named Dimash Kudaibergen titled SOS de terrien détresse, which as DeepL is telling me is SOS from an earthling in distress. So I'm going to listen through this track from start till finish and hear what we think. I should also note that Arsi has kindly provided me with some lyric translations for this, so I'm happy to hear that through as well. Let's go, let's do it. What have we got? I have heard Dimash before, by the way, but it's been a long time. It's been a very long time. Is this his breakthrough? Fantastic accent as well. The French is really believable, and also like you can tell with the range he's in, it's not a typical range. This guy's got quite a lot of octaves to his name, from what I understand. It's phenomenal vocal technique, him able to hold those notes for that long with that vibrato as well. The piano and the strings behind him seem like they're inconsequential, you know? Chills. I mean, it's nice to have the drums come in, bass line as well, but clearly Dimash is the focal point. He legatos onto that next note. Great bell curve energy wise. Wow. And for him to go down that low as well is wild, man. Honestly, like, again, he is the center of attention. I like the accompaniment, but I don't think it wouldn't be the same without Dimash on the pipes. Obviously. almost whistle voice, isn't it? If it's not. So pristine. Sleep, child, sleep, as I understand it. They all have no idea what the hell just happened. I'm looking at the reactions on their faces and they're dumbfounded. They're either dumbfounded or starstruck. Clearly one of the best musicians, singers of their generation, purely from a technique perspective. I don't know if that suit kind of like growly vocals or vocal fry, but like what they're doing there is phenomenal. I mean, I have no idea what's happening now. I think it's the end of the song, isn't it? Yeah? Is there more stuff going on from the crowd? I think it's just basically the crowd. So we're going to look at the lyrics now and check that out as well. So again, we've got lyrics here for this song. SOS to terrien in distress, from an earthling in distress. Why do I live? Why do I die? Why do I laugh? Why do I cry? This is an SOS of an earthling in distress. There's some deep stuff going on here, you know. It's interesting to read through it. I love the poetry, you know. I'd never had my feet on the ground. I'd rather be a bird. I'm not comfortable in my own skin. That's kind of really engaging innately. I think that if you listened to this performance from the position of being a native speaker, I think it'd hit you even harder, you know. It's wonderful. Incredible singer. But also the story is compelling as well. At the great lotto of the universe, if ever it were more beautiful, I'm not comfortable in my own skin, if ever it were more beautiful. Yeah, so basically they're not just happy with who they are as their plane of existence, you know. I've never had my feet on the ground, if ever it were more beautiful seen from above, if ever it were more beautiful. So I think basically he wants to look at the world from a third person perspective and not necessarily be a part of it. He wants to sort of get a sense of awareness from outside of his sort of zone, to be more appreciative of it, or simply to feel more comfortable. Because this is my review, my conclusion of this track, Dimash Kudaibergen. Their performance of SOS to terrien in distress. What I think this track's about, as I mentioned, I think it's about Dimash talking about his position as a human being and how he just doesn't really feel like he belongs in it. You know, his emotions and maybe overwhelm him to an extent that he wants to sort of like divorce himself from the globe and kind of look at it from like an alien perspective. Like maybe he feels like things are sort of like interfering with him, from otherworldly things are interfering with him that make him feel as if he is not of this world, if that makes sense. Just in his human carapace, just trying to sort of like cope with the void that is our existences. And I think that's a beautiful, very deep thing to sing about. I think the vocals mirrored that very well from the various sections we had, with some very sort of quiet, kind of pretty vulnerable bits in its upper range, to the chorus coming in. We start as low as you can in this range, and he kind of wisens up and goes up in the halfway point, often going into like little bits of near whistle voice and stuff in the tails. Phenomenal dynamic range to the performance, as well as like the vocals and everything like that. I thought it was fantastic, and genuinely when I hear this guy sing, it's like, wow, he's ticking every single box. I don't think you could possibly improve that performance vocally, because that's the thing. He's an incredible singer, but he doesn't over-sing at the same time. It's more of a spectacle than anything else with Dimash. It's more like, wow, you hear him, you recognize him immediately the next time you do. It's unforgettable. I can only imagine what it's like to have been in the room like listening to him live. I think that's a really special thing, you know. It's one thing to tell a story with lots of pretty poetry and talking about birds and not being able to sort of like fly and stuff like that, and looking at the world and like not, you know, all the stuff we were talking about in the lyrics. But it's another thing to be able to pair that performance in a way that's emotionally relevant to it, and also in a way where you can like make it authentic and believable, whilst also mystical and fanciful, like the theme that we had behind it. You know, at 4.5 minutes, this track was actually relatively succinct. We had lots of changes in energy levels between like the sort of quieter piano parts with the strings coming in at the start, to when the bass and drums come in and he just Dimash just launches himself at the microphone and the ceiling on the limiting chain. It's fantastic, really. I think the guy, you know, it's not just that he can sing well and the story's done well. The performance there from like the pianos, again, the strings, they're lovely and supportive of each other, fairly minimalist at first, but then they start to develop later on so as to keep the listener's attention, but also just so that it doesn't repeat itself too much. But it also manages to find a way with the piano, strings, etc., to not sort of interfere with Dimash is doing too much, not to create any sort of awkward sort of like interludes, intervals, or instances where, hey, Dimash is just not suiting the actual vibe of the accompaniment by default of it simply not being written well enough to be able to cope with his vocal range there, what he's capable of doing with his voice. I think the accompaniment with those sort of more sort of traditional instruments was incredibly, it was a smart idea, and I like the fact that he had a sort of a little symphony beside him playing along, because he's at that level now as a performer where he could probably justify that. I don't think this kind of performance vocally would suit every type of genre of music, but it's just so regal and elegant and inspiring to hear him sing that it makes sense with the uplifting kind of like string motifs there, and the piano kind of cascading and glittering in the night sky, with the bass basically providing a foundation for the groove and everything like that, and the drums kind of keeping alongside it to kind of mellow things out and keep things at a sense of pace for people who are maybe not so set on solely the vocals and solely the context of that. It's about allowing a little bit for everyone, but that within reason. I think that we smashed it out of the park with this track. I think it was really well written and performed. The theme spoke of hope for the future, although I think with the way he was singing, it also was like a get me out of here. I could hear both. It's like we're trying to accept our fate, but we also don't necessarily want to if we can avoid it. I think the overall harmony, the composition, just before I continue, because I don't really think I've spoken about that enough, was relatively minimalist in the complexity of it. I don't think we had a lot of extensions in the chord progressions. We didn't have a lot of sort of like risque stuff happening with the bass lines or the drum fills or anything like that. We had a lot of instruments and a lot of layers, but they're performing simple tasks simply to kind of remain like there was a sense of sadness and a gravity to it, but it was almost to kind of keep things relatively simple for Dimash to just do whatever the hell he wanted on top of, and to make him sort of stand out more. And I appreciate that, you know. Sure, your accompaniment has got to be at a similar level of quality as the vocal performance, but it also needs to know when to step back and allow the singer to shine. And I think they managed to do that well. So it was a great balance between the vocals and the actual. I think that the story was communicated well with the music. And all in all, I think they were very well connected. I mean, finally, the recording, mixing, and mastering was great. Again, it was a live performance, but it sounded commercial grade. Dimash's voice was wonderfully present in the mix. The strings, the piano, the keys, you know, the drums and bass were nicely varied throughout without being too quiet or too loud. They had a great sort of balance to them without sort of peaking or like being too sort of like irrelevant or from an audio perspective there. There were no weird resonant frequencies in the frequency spectrum, and it was nice and wide in the stereo field. There was a nice reverb to Dimash's voice there, which was really pretty to listen to. It had a sense of otherworldliness to it, which is kind of comparable to his vocal stills, I suppose. And all in all, I think the leveling was fine. And yeah, basically it was nice and loud without pumping, with again dynamic range. Not everything wasn't just the same loudness all the time. I'm so thankful for that. It sounds like they really paid attention to the dynamic markers and what was appropriate and what was needed, and sort of like smashed it out of the park. Just as a final comment, I know I didn't necessarily seem to sort of like too wowed by it as some people were probably expecting me to do. I have listened to this guy before, so like I'm not gonna fake a reaction to make people happy, because that's just dumb, and it's just dumb. It might be good for, well, I suppose the videos are technically entertainment if it's a video. I don't know, man, like I'm reviewing it, but I suppose, you know, without me having a massive overreaction to it, I can clearly say that Dimash is one of the best singers we have in the 21st century by far, at least within his genre. And I look forward to what he does in the future. You know, someone will like down there 5 octaves is ridiculous. And I think not only that, but he can write great lyrics, and he can also choose the range to sing in that suits the mood and the approach for it as well. There's like emotional depth and maturity there, which I can always like get behind. It's great. He's a very special singer, and this is a great song. But this was my review of Dimash Kudaibergen's SOS de terrien and détresse. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show Dimash some love via the various social medias and they're on your YouTube. And stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as either help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP Patron review. Spiderhands out.